Welcome back to another free session of my series that I'm calling Applying the Wisdom of Chinese Medicine. And my name is Dr. Jeffrey Lee, and today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects is boosting gut health. So we're going to be boosting the digestive system, and there's going to be three things that we're going to be covering today. I'm going to be talking about the Chinese medicine perspective on digestive health. I'm going to be talking about the microbiome, and we're also going to be talking about some herbs that are fantastic for gut health. And for all of you, please give us a thumbs up and please share this video, especially if you're finding this helpful. And again, we're so overwhelmed with the awesome feedback that we're getting. We're getting a lot of emails from patients and a lot of great questions. And I'm glad you guys are forwarding this to, your aunt up north or, people in different countries. Again, I really appreciate that. And before I kind of launch into this topic that I'm really excited about, I just want to do a quick recap of what we talked about last week. So last week it's on having restorative sleep. And we talked about, the yin and yang balance of sleep, where remember I was saying the yang is kind of the daytime energy, and this is where we get to do what our heart's desire is, whatever we want to do. But the nighttime is the yin time, and the yin time is where the body and the mind need that rest to restore and rebuild there. So we talked about that last time. We also talked about creating that ideal environment for sleep. And, I got into some things like lights and like blue light, for example, stretching or, getting a good sleep routine. And we also talked about a couple of just, more of a yin diets there, like a yin dietary lifestyle, keeping it simple, including a little bit of fasting there. So that's the recap from last week. And this week we're talking about digestion. And I saved digestion kind of towards the end here. And I was thinking about whether I should actually comment or have a talk on it. Mainly because I know Dr. Karen and both Dr. Neetu, they've done just great talks on digestive health. And I think as naturopathic doctors, we teach a lot and we help our patients with digestion. So that's actually one of the reasons why I thought I'm gonna throw this in as a bonus, where we're gonna talk about things from a Chinese medicine angle about digestion. So like I always do in this series, I'm going to walk you through just a couple of questions that I just want you to think about and to see if, that some of these questions might help you figure out whether, you're prone to having a bit of digestive weakness, for example. So first question is, do you overeat often? Okay, so do you overeat often is the first question. Secondly, do you have indigestion? And indigestion comes in as like bloating, pain, heartburn, constipation, diarrhea. Do you have any of those symptoms there? Number 3, do you eat less than 2 servings of fresh green vegetables a day? And I'm not talking necessarily about the raw vegetables, but just fresh and green. Those are going to be important for digestive health. And number 4, do you eat sweet snacks to just kind of get you through the day? Do you have candy and things like that at your desk just so it can get you through the day? And then number 5 is, do you eat takeout more than twice a week? And we know that a lot of the oils and the additives in a lot of takeout food, unfortunately, can cause a lot of digestive weakness. So again, in the summary, I'm going to be giving you more questions there just to help you kind of think through, jog your memory, and see how you are with your digestive health. Now, let's move on to talking about Chinese medicine and digestive health. Now, there's 2 organ systems that we focus on, and it sounds very obvious, but it's the spleen and the stomach organ systems. And I just want to back up for a moment, because we know that diet and nutrition has always been a cornerstone of health in Chinese medicine. And I really enjoy, and I've been very fortunate because I've had the privilege of studying both Chinese nutrition, so TCM nutrition, but I've also studied Western nutrition. And I'm just going to do a little bit of a contrast there. When I'm studying Western nutrition, there's a lot of science there, right? We learn a lot about biochemistry. We learn about macronutrients, micronutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, fats, minerals, vitamins. Those are all super, super important. And I love geeking out on that. And especially in the past 20 years, the amount of research that's gone into nutrition is fantastic. But some observations with Western nutrition. There's a lot of, I find that there's a lot of fad diets. So after you've been practicing for, about 15 years, you start seeing this trend of a lot of, fad diets. I remember like the Zone diet, the Atkins diet, now the ketogenic diet is very popular there. So again, I'm not saying that any of these are bad, but I guess with Western nutrition, and I think a lot of people like to take this, throw a little bit of a marketing spin on it, and then tell everyone that, hey, this is the end all be all type of diet there, and I'm just going to contrast that to traditional Chinese medicine nutrition. And this is where, when you're studying it, it's actually it's very simple the way TCM nutrition approaches it. And what I really respect about Chinese medicine nutrition is it really follows kind of the words of Hippocrates, really let food be thy medicine. And Chinese medicine nutrition really honors the cycles of the earth. It honors kind of the seasons, right? Eating within the season. We're eating root vegetables during the fall and winter months there, versus the spring and summer we're eating a lot more fresh greens, fresh produce there. So that's a little bit of the contrast with Western nutrition and traditional Chinese medicine nutrition, and to me both is fantastic there. Now let's talk a little bit more about the spleen and the stomach. And I like this quote in Chinese medicine. The spleen and the stomach, these digestive organs, they're responsible for digesting your food and your beverages. But they're also very important in digesting emotions and thoughts. So there's a Chinese proverb that says this, the spleen and the stomach, it helps you keep what nurtures your body and your spirit, and it helps you let go of things that don't nurture your body and your spirit. So it's like food, you harness the energy from the food, and then you let go of the waste products there. And if you think of it from an emotion standpoint too, that's also something that's really, really important. And in our day and age of just more stress, more anxiety, we process it, but sometimes when our digestive system is weak, or our spleen and stomach is weak, we have difficulty letting go of certain emotions that don't serve us. The stomach and the spleen, the element in the five elements, it's earth. And I always remember the spleen and stomach as earth, because I think of Mother Earth and how the role of Mother Earth is to nurture and to help us grow. So the stomach chi, the function of kind of the stomach organ is it takes all the nutrients that we get and it shares that energy. It spreads that energy to support all our other organ systems. It feeds into the liver, the kidney, the heart, the lungs there. And that's very, very important for building energy. And I did talk a lot about energy in a couple of the talks before, about 4 weeks ago. And if you remember from that talk there, I talked about gu chi, and chi is the energy that circulates. And for us to build energy, we need to really be able to harness that gu chi, and it's really getting all the vitamins and the minerals and the macronutrients from the foods that we're eating. The sensory organ for the digestive system is the mouth. And When I have patients who have a lot of maybe mouth-related issues, such as sores in the mouth or bleeding gums or even bad breath, that helps give me a clue or a hint that perhaps the digestive system is out of balance. The spleen or the stomach is weak. The tissue that's involved with the spleen and the stomach are muscles, and when I work with a lot of pain in my practice, and I work with a lot of muscles. And when I see patients with weak muscles or underdeveloped muscles, or if they're cramping all the time, or they're tired very easily, there's a good chance that the spleen and stomach systems are out of balance when the muscles aren't healing well. And that's when, when I do acupuncture, for example, I will treat them with acupuncture points. But if I don't see the level of healing that I'm expecting, this is when I start, diving into a lot more about diet and making sure the digestive system is healthy. I want to talk about the taste that represents the stomach and spleen is sweetness. So if you crave like a lot of sweets, that could indicate that you actually need a little bit more support for your digestive system. And maybe another way to look at it also is if you overindulge in a lot of sweets there, that can actually put a lot of pressure and wreak havoc on your digestive system. And lastly, in this section, I want to talk about worry, anxiety, overthinking. These are the emotions that's associated with the spleen and the stomach. And so if you're a person that just gets anxious very easily, or you're just easily overwhelmed, or you overthink things, it's very possible that you have an imbalance in that spleen and stomach meridian there. So how do we support the spleen and stomach? And I also work with a lot of people under a tremendous amount of stress. And right now, I think what we're collectively going through as a community is, we are under a lot of stress there, this COVID-19. And, finding ways of dealing with your stress, I think, is really important, because I think when we let stress just overtake us, it really does impact our gut health. And when our gut health is impacted, we're not drawing the nutrients in as readily. And it's affecting our energy there. So things that I love doing to just help me with my own stress and worry and anxiety is, for me, movement is very important. So I make sure I exercise. I've shared in another one of my I think it was my master class, committing to journaling, committing to prayer, committing to just kind of disconnecting and grounding myself. That's really, really important for me. And then working on deep breathing exercises. So those are just a few things that you can do to just deal with some of the stress there. And please look back at some of those other ideas that we've talked about over the past few weeks there. Another great suggestion is the spleen and stomach organ systems. They prefer that we eat mostly cooked foods and warmed foods. So lightly steaming our foods, lightly stir frying, that's ideal. And I think in North America, we love to eat and drink a lot of cold things. Like, we love cold beverages, especially on a hot day. And this is where you have to be careful. If you do have weak spleen energy, weak stomach energy, digestive issues, be careful with eating too much cold foods. And cold foods for me are like, temperature that's cold, or even raw foods. I can think back of actually a number of my patients who just love sashimi and the sushi. And I remember over a period of time, I said, right now, while we're repairing your digestive system, try this experiment. Cut out just cold beverages. Just drink like warm water, hot water, warm teas there. Avoid like the raw foods, and avoid like things like the sashimi, the raw fish there, raw vegetables there. And sure enough, over like a few months there, they could really feel and sense that energy kind of rebuilding. Now, I'm not as strict when it comes to fruit. Fruit, just by nature, it's a little bit easier to digest there. So in Chinese medicine, the essence, it doesn't take as much energy to sort of break down. So having a bit of raw fruit is okay there. Another suggestion here is avoid those late night meals there, and I was talking with my wife, and we've got a lot of friends that I think their schedules are all over the place. And right now, we have a lot of friends who are just eating dinner like at 10 p.m. right, and they're waking up a lot later. But just remember that having like late night meals, it really sits in our digestive system, and while our digestion, like while the liver and the digestive system should be shifting into filtering and detoxifying, but if you're eating too late, you're robbing of that opportunity to detox your body, because then the enzymes and the machinery in your digestive system starts working at digesting the foods there. So really avoid eating late night, and ideally it's like having dinner around like 6 or 7 and just having several hours to digest, and ideally as well having like a lighter meal as well for dinner. So we sort of have it backwards in North America, where we eat like our heavy meals at dinner, and when we eat lighter in the morning. It really should be the other way around. And then one other thing, and I kind of smile when I say this, is what I've been doing actually the past year or so is, but I am mainly having like a plant-based diet 5 days out of the week, and on the weekends that's when I might eat out, or I might eat like a little bit more meat there. And I smile because my friends who are hearing this, I know you guys are going to be laughing, because I used to be the prototype of the guy that just ate all meat. When you've heard about my story with me being 50 pounds heavier than I am right now. I just loved meat, and I still do, to be honest with you. But there's just so much evidence of having a plant-based diet that's just good to nourish the body, but protect against chronic illness there. So that's another tip that you can do to support your stomach and spleen health. Okay, now I'm going to change gears a little bit, and I wanted to talk about the microbiome. And the microbiome, we're going to just unpack a little bit about what that is, why it's important, and what's actually destroying our microbiome. And I thought a lot about whether I should be talking about this, but I think it's actually very, very important to talk about the microbiome. So the microbiome is simply the easiest way to understand. It's just the collection of different bugs. So all the different bacteria that's on our skin, that's in our digestive system, that's what I'm calling the microbiome. And really in the past 10 years, there's just so much more research on how important the microbiome is. But we are actually totally outnumbered with the amount of bacteria in our body compared to our cells. So we have an estimated amount of like trillions of human cells, but we've got like, I think 10 times more bacteria than human cells. And there's such a dynamic communication between our bacteria, our microbiome, and like our genetics there and the genes. So that's really, really important. And so what does the microbiome do? It maintains like intestinal health. It helps keep that barrier in our digestive system. It protects us against pathogens, and so harmful bacteria, harmful yeast, parasites. It helps us digest our foods, and it helps us with our immune system. Now that's just scratching the surface, because it actually does so much more, and we're constantly discovering that. But that gives you sort of an idea of how important it is. What's fascinating is with studying the microbiome, and we now know that there is the different disease processes that we have, or when we're diagnosed with a certain disease, there's this very unique signature that we're able to see with our bacteria. And what I mean by that is they can show that certain diseases will clearly show like a higher growth of some harmful bacteria, or it shows that a certain disease has less of good bacteria. And let me give you an example. Like I was talking earlier about spleen deficiency, right? Spleen and stomach deficiency. And what that translates to in Chinese medicine is when people have a lot of weakness in the body, they just don't have energy. That's a very standard spleen kind of pattern, a weakness there. And in some newer research, they were able to show that somebody that's diagnosed with a spleen deficiency, they have sort of a very unique bacteria signature. They have much less lactobacillus, certain species of lactobacillus, and they have more of a harmful bacteria. And what I find fascinating is they didn't know this thousands of years ago. They didn't have the technology to measure this, but just based on observation, they're able to formulate herbal formulas to then treat spleen deficiency. And what they're showing now with modern science is these herbal formulas can go and rebalance this microbiome. It will kill the harmful bacteria and it'll boost up the good bacteria. That's brilliant. And I think that goes back to how Chinese medicine is. The herbs and the food is so different from Western medicine, where Western medicine is just one track, right? We're going to take this one drug to do this one purpose. Where in Chinese medicine, there's so much synergy, and it's using the plant medicine from Mother Nature. And this reminds me of one of the stories I've shared before, where the research in the Amazon rainforest, where they got stool samples from some of the indigenous people there, and they just saw such amazing diversity in their microbiome, and that amazing diversity led to them being far, far healthier, far less risk of any of the chronic diseases that we're seeing in North America. And when you contrast that to what we're seeing right now in North America, we have 10% of what they have in their diversity of microflora. And what that means is we're 90% deficient. And that's one of the reasons why we're so susceptible to all these disease processes. So I really wanted to bring in the microbiome while I'm talking about digestive health there, because it's so important. And why I'm talking about the microbiome is because, unfortunately, we are destroying our microbiome. I just talked about how we have only 10% left of the diversity there. And one of the key things that there's several things that's knocking down the microbiome, but one important thing is glyphosate. And glyphosate, you might have already heard it by now. Glyphosate is an herbicide. It's a weed killer. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail there, but I just wanted to just raise that awareness again, get that information out there, because I'm just going to invite you to just be aware, like read up a little bit on this. There's some great doctors out there who's really educating us on glyphosate or these weed killers. And what glyphosate does is it's a weed killer, so it prevents the plants from growing, and it affects certain proteins in the growth cycle of the plants. Now, the companies that created glyphosate, they always said that, it's safe for humans, it doesn't harm human cells, but they know it harms like weeds and also it harms microorganisms, it harms bacteria, certain bacteria strains, but they never made the connection because they didn't know how dependent we are on bacteria. So when we are exposed to a lot of glyphosate, so when the farmers are spraying all these weed killers over the crops, gets into our food chain, we start eating it on a regular basis. It starts killing off all of our bacteria, a lot of our bacteria. And that that produces a lot of chronic problems in our body. So the connection here is not only, because our gut is so full of the bacteria, the good bacteria, and glyphosates, these herbicides, are killing the bacteria, we're just setting ourselves up for just way more risk of chronic disease. And so, so there's I just wanted to highlight one of the reasons why we're seeing such an explosion of chronic disease, especially since the 1990s. And this is when I started studying at the University of British Columbia in the sciences, and I started getting into medicine, because it was so shocking to see that, in the 1950s and 1960s, you're not seeing this huge explosion of chronic disease. But since the 90s till now, you're seeing rise of cancer, autoimmune conditions, pain. You're just seeing you're seeing autism. You're seeing so many issues, and that's just something that I just want to continue to raise that awareness there. So the purpose of me talking about the microbiome here is I want us to be more aware about food security. I want us to be more educated about, what foods are high in pesticides. And there's things that we can look up, the environmental working group, to see like what foods are heavily sprayed there. This is where in my own lifestyle, I do my best to eat organic as much as possible. And I love supporting a lot of our local organic farms that I know that are not heavily sprayed there. And some of the things that I'm doing right now is I'm just so much more diligent with, eating fermented foods, or, my probiotics, my antioxidants, even supporting my liver and doing a healthy detox there. And definitely just eating a lot more fresh greens and fresh produce there. So that's what I wanted to talk about with the microbiome. So we talked a little bit about tips for Chinese medicine and boosting gut health. We talked a little bit about microbiome, and I know a lot of you are enjoying the herbal tips there. So I just wanted to just wrap things up and talk a little bit more about herbs that improve digestion. And so two of my favorite are the mint family and also the bitter herb gentian. And I just want to talk a bit about mint family. Peppermint, spearmint. I tend to recommend to my patients, about an hour after a meal, it's nice to enjoy a warm mug of, peppermint tea. And how does that work? Like, how does a peppermint tea, soothe digestion or indigestion? The active compounds, these polyphenols, especially menthol. So menthol is what gives that flavor of mint. It encourages the bile to flow. So our liver makes bile. It's stored in the gallbladder, and after a meal that maybe has a bit more fat, our gallbladder dumps out the bile, and the purpose of the bile is to break down the fats. Bile is a salt, and it emulsifies the fats there, and it makes it far easier for us to digest the fats that are broken down. So it really eases and soothes our digestive system. So that's why mints are excellent. Now, and I'm going to talk now about the gentian herb. Gentian is a very bitter herb, and in North America, we've really lost that taste of bitter. We really don't appreciate it compared to the rest of the world. We just don't like the taste of it. But bitters are so important for having a healthy digestive system, because what bitters do is it primes our digestive system, helps us release more digestive juices, digestive enzymes there. It helps our pancreas, prepare for releasing very specific digestive enzymes to break down our foods there. And it also aids in the bile production there. So if this is something that, if you are noticing, a bit of weaker digestion, and overall, maybe a spleen deficiency pattern, really kind of slowly kind of balancing your taste through some of these herbs, such as gentian and mint, can be quite valuable there. So I hope that was helpful there. Like always, I really enjoy sharing with you these tips here, especially from a Chinese medicine perspective. And I'm going to invite you, if you're finding this helpful and you want to just join our community, go to our website at yourbriohealth.com and sign up for our newsletter. And in our newsletter, you'll get these updates there, and also you get a chance to participate in certain topics there. So thank you for your time, and stay safe, and I look forward to sharing more next time. Oh, looks like there's a question. Okay, thank you. Is there any condition where bitters are contraindicated? Oh, very good question. And actually, I'm glad you asked that. And I do have time, so I'm happy to address that. There's actually, yes, though there are. And actually, even for bitters as well as mint, sometimes I find that if there's like things like heartburn, if my patients have a really active, heartburn, that's when I might be a little bit more cautious about that. Now, I have in some conditions, used bitters to treat heartburn, but this is why it's going to be more of a case-by-case situation. Some of my patients where if I see like high liver enzymes or if I see gallstones, I'll be also very cautious about that, about giving them maybe too much of these herbs that cause the gallbladder to dump out bile there. So yes, I hope that does answer a question of when there's certain situation where it's contraindicated. But for the most part, it is rather safe. And I usually will have my patients actually just kind of play around with that bitter taste first. And rather than going through like a tincture or something, I might have them just experiment with certain foods that are a little bit bitter. Certain vegetables tend to be a little bit bitter, bitter melon. Play around with that and see and tune your taste buds, because the human body is incredibly adaptive, and so play around with those types of foods there, and this is where I start fine tuning it with each patient. Where okay, we might have to rebalance your digestive system with certain herbs, but as I pull the herbs away or I pull some of the supplements away, how do we support you with foods? And if you can eat a well-balanced foods that have like the bitter as well as sweet, salty, pungent, sour, having that in a variety of different foods, that's great at balancing your digestive system. I hope that answered your question. If there's a follow-up, please post that. I'm happy to answer that. And if there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer a little bit more. If there isn't, again, thank you for those questions there. And keep those questions coming in. I'm going to do my best to keep answering them in the post there. And feel free to just email the clinic directly. Oh, awesome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. My pleasure. Thank you for your comment, and thanks for your participation. So I'm going to wrap things up now, and again, have a wonderful day, and we'll keep these great videos coming. Thank you so much.